The pre-1970 immigrants were more educated, made more money, were more likely to buy houses, and 30% of them went home. Now no one goes home. They go on welfare, and they are far more likely to be on welfare than the native population. I think a nation's policies should be concerned with the people already here, and that includes the immigrants who came last year and the year before. It should be people who live here benefit, not to become the, battered woman's shelter of the world, where we're bringing in the hardest cases and, the wife beaters and the single mother with eight kids.
Welcome to Age of the Obsolete, the weekly podcast that examines the intersection of technology, democracy, and the future of work. I'm your host, John. I see them from my window each morning. 6 men standing under the awning over by the candy store, heads bent down and saying nothing, waiting for the van to arrive. When it comes, they pile in like prisoners on a chain gang. Then the door slides shut and the van drives away. I'm never home early enough to see them return, but by the following morning they're there again, ready for another day of back-breaking labor, probably for less than the minimum wage. They've come to this country from places like Colombia, Honduras, and Guatemala, not to sell their skills and intelligence, but because of the strength of their backs and their willingness to work, usually at jobs that others reject. It would be easy to feel sorry for them, to talk about unfair labor practices and exploitation, but that would be to miss the point. Since 1820, when records were first kept, more than 80 million people have come to the United States. People from Asia, Europe, the Caribbean, and Central America, Ireland, Italy, Poland, and Germany, China, the Philippines, Japan, people of every race and religion, a migration unparalleled in the history of the world. Some have been doctors, lawyers, scientists, and engineers, but for the most part, they've come uneducated, men and women seeking sanctuary from either poverty or oppression or a world gone mad. And in America they found it, a chance to transform their lives and the lives of their children. My grandparents were part of that great migration. They came from the southern region of Calabria, from the town of Cosenza midway down the Italian boot. After being at Ellis Island, they moved to an apartment in Jersey City. My grandfather dug ditches. My grandmother stayed at home and raised 7 children. At first, neither of them spoke English, but slowly they learned not only the language, but how to get by, and their children learned with them. Enough to teach their own children, who went on to become doctors and teachers, scientists and business executives. In the grand scheme of things, my grandparents went unnoticed, but to say that they were unimportant would be to miss the point. Like the 80 million that traveled with them, and the thousands more that continue to come, grandparents and their counterparts were more than immigrants. They were strands in the fabric that made this country great. Today, the debate about immigration continues, and with it, the debate on terrorism, globalization, and the future of work. It's a debate worth having, but only if we can look beyond our present circumstances to the final result we want to achieve. As in any debate, prejudice and rancor must be put aside. Instead of division, what we need to search for is common ground. That's easy to say, and probably a platitude, but sometimes platitudes contain the essence of truth. We also need to remember that narratives that rely on themes such as economic contribution divide the argument along lines of class. For most immigrants, contribution comes from assimilation, and assimilation is a process rather than an immediate fact. Classifying people based on desirable skills also fails to recognize that not every member of a family is a high-skills candidate. My grandmother may not have had a university degree, but she nurtured 7 children and was an active part of her community until the day she died. And those 6 men standing outside the candy store, waiting for the van to arrive? None of the skills to start a new company or to make a discovery that will change the world. But 1 or 2 may save enough money to open a bodega or to send their children to college so they can do more. And that's what immigration is all about. This is John Revito saying thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions or want additional information on any of the topics covered in these podcasts, please go to our website at ageoftheobsolete.com. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.